we're live. We're going to double check to see that it's flowing through onto the LinkedIn and Facebook group. Let's see here. Let's see. How's your day going, Angelica?
Pretty good. Got off work. I've been responding to emails. I had... did not really change out of my pajamas. I'm still wearing my pajama shirt.
I love it.
But
cool.
Work from home is very glamorous.
Yeah, I hear you. Awesome. So we have people trickling in. Hey, everybody. Let us know where you guys are tuning in from. Type in the chat below where you guys are currently at. I think there's about 150 people so far. And I'm excited. Someone says, "Go Bears."
Go Bears!
Too much pride. Too much pride for me.
Honestly, Go Bears is both a real pride and also kind of this, almost this LOL joke of like, oh, there goes Berkeley. If they do something kind of stupid or weird, or they're like, "Go Bears!" Like,
that's right.
Go Bears.
Awesome. So we have people from where do we have here? So we got Dongho asks, "Is Angelica on TikTok?" Of course she's on TikTok. She's a star. People from LA, Riverside.
Wow,
Texas.
this is so interactive.
Yeah.
You're really popular.
You know, I think it's just because of you. Whenever I go live, usually just 2 people show up. So
no, that's not true.
Awesome. So we got even people from the Philippines, actually.
Oh, that's super cool. I mean, with her background picture, I think she's a Berkeley student.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Awesome. We got people from all over. And tell us one thing that you're excited to learn today. And whenever you guys have a question, type #question as well as your question, and attach your question right next to it, and we'll get to it.
I thought you were asking me that question. I was like, oh, what am I going to learn today?
Cool. So we got 300 people. I think it's enough people for us to get started. Angelica, so first, thank you so much for coming on and willing to share your story, but also share a little bit more about your experiences of growing your brand and a little bit of trying to figure out what that part of the space looks like. And so with that, I would love to ask you, like, who are you? Would love to share a little bit more about your background.
Who am I? Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Angelica. Currently, I'm a senior at UC Berkeley studying business, and I am also an APMM intern at Google, so doing product marketing, all that really fun stuff. And in my free time, I also like to create content online, whether that's college, lifestyle, pre-professional, and my brand itself is just my name, like Angelica Song. And I post on my YouTube under my name, and also my TikTok is _Angelica Song. And I do a little bit of all those things I've mentioned before, but just in the big bucket, empowering Gen Z, that 13 to 21 age group, to really live their best lives and try to, create powerful and awesome leaders and change makers. And with that, I developed, on top of like my personal brand and like my personal social media, which is just my name, I developed Your College Sis, which is a separate Instagram account where I kind of solidify and unify a lot of those resources and make it more of like a community and movement, which is like an extension of how Jerry Lee, and then you have Wonsulting, but you still have Jerry Lee. So that's kind of how it all comes together. And I'm super excited to answer any questions about, building a brand. I did it really all in 2020. I was able to grow within 6 months to like 110 plus followers on TikTok and 10,000 subscribers on YouTube from zero, which means anybody can do it. It's never too late. Everyone says it's too late to start social media, but it's definitely not. And grow and monetize it and make it a business. So you all can do it.
I love it. I love the early insights and energy. If you guys thought that was insightful, click the little light bulb icon on the thing below, or click thumbs up if you're on Facebook. Angelica, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your career, right? Before we dive into the whole, your story about personal branding, how you developed that, I'd love to hear a little bit about how your college journey has been so far, right? You're an APMM intern. How did that process go for you? Was it you applied, you knew that you were going to work at Google, and it worked out perfectly? share a little bit about your story.
Yeah, well, for those of you who don't know, Jerry and I actually had a conversation beforehand, and we actually have a lot of things in common. And starting with my college experience, I was born and raised in Southern California. I went to a very competitive high school. So going to Berkeley was, in the sense, I wasn't happy. I was such a brat, spoiled, thought I deserved more, was very ungrateful for the amazing opportunity to go to school like Berkeley. But I did come in pretty bitter and salty and just really immature about everything. Of like, I don't want to go to Berkeley, I want to go to, we don't need to say those other college names. But then I got here, and business culture could be very competitive and toxic at a lot of places, big or small. So I did get a whiff of that at Berkeley, and I was really unhappy. And so I decided to pick up other things like pre-med, which is why I have some pre-med classes on my resume, because I was like, you know what, maybe I want to do something in the intersection of business and medicine. And really, when I stopped listening to other people and trying to use the template formula to how to be successful at Berkeley, is when I started to be more happy. It was when I was just doing my own thing. That's also when I got better grades, is when I was just doing my own thing. So I think there's a positive correlation there. And then that happened, and there's like the club culture, and I found some really great clubs on campus that I got involved in, but also a handful of rejected from consulting clubs and like business frats that I got so close to the end, or I didn't even hear an interview back. With this whole process, sophomores at Berkeley, you have to apply to the business program, and a lot of people don't get in. And so then going through that stress and feeling like, oh, what if I don't get in because I'm not in any of these clubs?
Right.
But in the end, it worked out. But even with OChem on my GPA and all that stuff, I still got into the business school somehow. And maybe they appreciated that I was different. I don't know. But yeah, and then I always had a passion for marketing and consulting. That was kind of my two big things I was interested in. Junior year rolls around, I'm recruiting, doing all the consulting interviews. Got rejected from a lot of them, similar to you. And then...
No, I never even got the interview, so you were 10 steps ahead of me.
No, there were some, I didn't get any interviews, okay? But I just lumped them all together. But yeah, some of them, no interviews, right? We just get ghosted.
That's right.
Some I got first round, some I didn't get anything. And then, feeling pretty rough on myself. And just, we put so much pressure on certain name companies. And right when you're about to give up, somehow I got called in for a first round for Google. Didn't know why or how, but I got really lucky, I guess. Just like the college apps and, even internships of jobs. There's just so many things that go into it. So that happened. And then next thing you know, I get a call in January saying, you got the offer, and COVID happened. And then now I'm here doing the internship at home.
Wow. Such a wild story. It sounds like you are like, all right, like I'm at UC Berkeley, I'm at a great school, and then you went through some changes of majors, and then you got through some rejections, but ultimately it sounded like you were able to do well at the end of it.
Yeah, thankfully enough, I guess you just have to trust the process. But in hindsight, it's like it always works out, but in the moment, it's
right.
like, oh my gosh, my life sucks, it's terrible, I'm not gonna, I'm going to be unemployed. It's not working out for me. But it's interesting how things take a turn.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, because that your story is very similar to mine, where I felt like I got into college. I didn't even get into my top college. I was like, oh yeah, like this is going to be a college that I go to. Maybe I'll transfer out after a year. And then I was like, I'm too lazy for that, so I'll stick around at Babson. And then the more I began to learn about recruiting, the more I began to learn that, like, hey, like I know absolutely nothing about writing a resume or like even interviewing and all that stuff. But I think it was through a lot of organizations and people who've invested in me that's made me realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful to have the opportunities that I have, just being around the people that I've thankfully have chosen to be part of my life. But more importantly, you're right, that like amidst it all, somehow, some way, after getting all those rejection from all the big consulting companies, it was just like, hey, like Google would love to talk to you. So it was definitely a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and no hate on any of those companies because you and I both we were once lusting after them, so they're great places to be.
For sure, exactly. Awesome. So I know we see a ton of questions about personal branding. How did you start? How did you do it? But let's start with the beginning, right? I think there was a question here about what is or how did you start, right? Like what was the catalyst for that?
Yeah, well, conveniently, January 2020 is kind of when I decided to pump out more content regularly. So I would post on my YouTube every once in a while in the last few years at Berkeley, but being a Berkeley student, it's pretty hard to be a full time student and also create content online. And I think there's a reason why there aren't a lot of Berkeley YouTubers, just because you're just going to be so busy. But January 2020, I started posting more consistently, and then COVID happened. So then I'm stuck at home. People are forced to watch me. So it was this like formula that worked out because I'm home. I'm posting more. I was posting once a week on my YouTube channel, which helps it grow. On TikTok, I was posting 2 to 3 times a day for like months, and that really was the secret to success, was being consistent. And that's going to sound really repetitive with everybody, but they're like, oh, just be consistent, but also finding a niche. So I realized that there was a niche in the market for people who were talking about like college in a more authentic and realistic way, that are from the younger generation, because sometimes I'll see like college consultants, people try to sell their services and be hip and cool, but they were obviously much older. But I just really wanted to share my experience as a college student, and I knew the Gen Z audience was really active on TikTok and YouTube, so then I continued to post and create really niche content, pair it together with consistency that helped me grow. And then, once you grow, you could always branch out to other things like lifestyle and beauty or whatever you want. But I think in the beginning, just sticking to like what you know best and what you feel like you can offer in the market, I think really
That's
helps
awesome.
people grow.
Yeah, I love that. And as you're thinking about utilizing your personal branding, or I guess building that up, did you start in at the beginning knowing like, oh, I know I'm gonna get 100,000 followers in 3 months, whatever it is? Like, did you know that, or did you do it with the intent of saying, hey, like, I want to do this for the greater good because I know that there's this need in the market?
I think the latter came first. It was like, I just want to make content. But conveniently, also, I knew this content would be valuable to some people. So then eventually, I knew the growth would also come. So I guess it was like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and at the end of the day, my goal was to always provide resources and content for people that would usually have to pay money, or they're just, even going to a school like Babson or Berkeley. We have a lot of resources, and, not a lot of colleges don't have that privilege and to be a target school or all that stuff. So
yeah, and what's interesting is I feel like that's part of the reason what we try to do on Wonsulting is like we notice that there's a huge gap in education of trying to figure out, hey, what should you be doing from a recruiting perspective, what you should, and what they're actually teaching at the career centers, right? For me, I felt like as I was going through my recruiting process, the first thing I would do is go through my handshake or my career portal, and the only thing I would do is just keep applying every single day, just like apply, apply, apply. But then I would only hear back from like 5 companies after spending like 3 months on it.
It's like 5 companies you didn't even want in the first place, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's tough, and see, a lot of people are the comments are coming in being like, "Oh my gosh, me," right? And I love that you're targeting that specific niche because that's exactly what we love to do as well. I would love to hear a little bit more about as you were thinking about starting this. What was the kind of driving factor for you as you were building out your brand?
I think the driving factor was that in the end, I was really proud of my content, and that I felt that I was doing net positive in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, my content, your content, it's pretty all work safe, right? We're empowering people to live their best lives. So I felt, yeah, it's like the same reason why people do community service, right? Yeah, it's for other people, but also it makes you feel good too. Knowing that you can help people and also spread what you know that maybe some people know, but maybe more people don't know. So that was definitely one of my driving factors, is sharing, making these things more accessible.
Yeah. And I love that because it's so intrinsically driven, right? It's not like, hey, I'm doing this for this, but it's like, hey, like I see a need and I would just want to help people.
Right.
As you were thinking about maybe in both your career or maybe even both during your time of building personal branding, I'd love for you to share if you've had a moment when you felt like hey, like maybe this isn't for me. Maybe that little devil on your shoulder that's keep talking you down and telling you like, hey, maybe you're not good enough. Maybe your content isn't good. Maybe people don't really like that. Has there been a moment for that for you?
I think I'm kind of in that moment now. Just
what?
feeling
no, crazy.
I mean, no, hear me out.
Okay.
Well, I think with with all the things about TikTok and being banned, and also more and more people are getting on the app, but then more and more countries are like when India banned TikTok. I think that definitely hurt my views because a large market of people who are interested in coming to the States for college and high school and that kind of stuff comes from the Indian market who's interested in international schools. And so, yeah, that was happening. Also, I think I was one of the pioneers of this like high school college tip advice category on TikTok, but I think a lot of people noticed that this formula or whatever I was doing was working. So a lot of people started copying my content like verbatim or just rewording things. And sometimes they do better than your stuff, and then you feel burnt out. So I think with that and everything going on right now with like TikTok and the buzz, I feel like I'm in not a rut, but just like a thinking about how I want to go forward. Like, do I want to transition to YouTube more or Instagram or TikTok? But I mean, I love the app TikTok, and it's one of the most powerful things because there's the organic multiplier growth is free and easy, and it's been working for me for 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard not to get attached to the numbers when you're like on a number high for a while.
Yeah. I totally hear that. Yeah, I think this is one of the things that I talk to Jonathan a lot, actually, is that like, hey, how do we make sure that we don't get so number driven that the only thing that we care about are those numbers? Because at a certain point, then you're driven to write things because you want the numbers, not because you doing it because of the original reason why you started posting content, right? And it definitely can be very tough, especially when you kind of get into that cycle, and then maybe you post a couple content, it doesn't do as well, then you're maybe thinking, oh my gosh, am I kind of getting transitioned out, or maybe it's not good enough. So it definitely can be, I guess, hard to manage. But I guess on that topic, how do you manage it?
I think what helps keep me not so attached to the numbers is I always respond to all my DMs on Instagram. So
I love that.
And I know you do that too, right? You respond.
I try my best. So people who haven't received a message from me on LinkedIn, I'm sorry. I just have a lot.
You guys, Jerry posted the event, and I got 75 LinkedIn requests within 17 hours from just people who were also mutuals of Jerry. So I was like, you are the real influencer here. But yeah, going through my Instagram messages, high school students telling me they love my content, that it was so helpful, or even college students who watch it, and even post-grad students who said, you know what, like, I love your tips, and I wish I knew them. I wish I knew them in high school or college, or they still help me today. And so reading those personal stories really helped me stay motivated and keep me on track of what and why I did this for.
Yeah, awesome. I know that we're a third of the time in. Maybe we transition to some of the audience questions for a little bit.
Sounds good.
Cool. So awesome. If you guys have any questions, please type #questions so that I see the little blue text and type your question, and we will get to it. So I see a question here that I really liked, and it was about imposter syndrome. So Steven asks, hi, Jerry and Angelica. I believe FGLI means first gen low income student. I would love to hear about your experiences overcoming imposter syndrome. So Angelica, as you've gone through your time at Cal, or even your internship at Google, or maybe as you were building out your personal branding, has there been a time you've gone through imposter syndrome?
Yeah, well, thanks, Stephen, for this question. And although I'm not a first-generation student, I come from a working-class background. I think Jerry does as well. And I think that when I came to Google as my internship, I definitely felt a lot of imposter syndrome in the beginning, especially because I've never had an official internship before. The previous summer, I was doing study abroad and I was doing my pre med classes. And, you know, at Berkeley, everyone has an internship like the day before they come to college. So my first one's like a big company and big deal, and the people on the team are so talented and smart. And the people at Google, they're charismatic, funny, awesome, smart, talented, and you're thrown into a team. So it definitely was a little overwhelming at first because I was like, I don't know anything. They picked the wrong girl. But I mean, it just takes time to learn and expose yourself, and then you realize like, oh, okay, maybe it's not too bad, and maybe they didn't choose the wrong person.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I do come from a first-gen low-income background, actually. This question actually is very dear to me, and I think very similar to you. I have a similar answer, but I think the way that I would approach this question is like, I think if you were to ask any executive or if you were to ask any person who is currently on their career, I don't think that self or imposter syndrome ever really goes away. Like, I think especially if you're going to be in an environment like Google or Cal or whatever environment, you're always going to be surrounded by someone who's going to be just slightly more smart or slightly better than you. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think how you can be bad is if you take that and almost spin it into a negative thing to say, hey, this person is so much smarter than me, therefore I don't belong. I think if you get into that mindset, it can really be toxic and really wear down on you. But if you take that mentality to say, oh, wow, this person has so much more knowledge than I do, I would love to learn from that person, then that suddenly becomes more of an empowerment tool more than an actual tool to bring you down. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the way that I've dealt with it. If that was insightful, give us the little the light bulb button on LinkedIn. We'd love to see it. And the next question that I really like is Heidi asks, are you an extrovert? Any advice for introverts who can build their personal branding effectively?
I am bread and butter extrovert.
I would be surprised if you weren't. I was like, oh my gosh.
But I mean, there are tons of content creators who are not extroverts, and they find comfort and empowerment by creating content online as an introvert and connecting with other introverts. So I would say that if you're an introvert and you're trying to build your personal brand effectively, I think you could use that that's your brand. You want to build a brand and you're an introvert. Like, that is your brand. And being a impactful leader in any space or industry as an introvert is itself a brand. It's in itself. And I think, there's a study out there that this says that introverts are better leaders or something like that. But no, I mean, there's a lot of room for this space to have more introverts, and introverts can connect with other introverts and encourage more introverts.
Yeah, I think what's kind of nested under this question is like, you are. I think first, I'm an extrovert. I took the MBTI thing, and I'm like 99% introvert or extrovert, and like 1% introvert.
What's your Enneagram?
Enneagram? I don't know what an Enneagram is.
You guys should comment what your Enneagram type is. I'm type 3.
Okay, yeah. Tell us what your Enneagram is, and let me know what you guys think I am, because I've never heard of that. To be honest, I don't really have a great answer for this question. I don't know if, for me, just because I'm such an extrovert, it's hard for me to imagine what my life would look like if I was an introvert. That being said, though, I think I love Angelica's suggestion of just finding other introverts online who are creating content and just seeing what they do to see what works.
Yeah.
And Noel says, Jerry, an extrovert? No way. So funny.
See, everybody knows what this is except for you. They're all sending me their types.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's 3, 4, 9, 5, 3. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like a 12 or like 25. I don't know.
There's only 9, I think.
Okay, well, I'm 10 then. Last question. I love this question. Abigail asks, how do you two constantly stay inspired and motivated?
Well, like I mentioned a little ago, there are definitely times there's waves where I'm uninspired, unmotivated, burnt out. But I think what helps is, talking to people who DM me, and doing that really helps me feel, I guess, I do have value and I can bring content and people are motivated by the content I motivate them with. So it's a positive feedback loop.
For sure.
But yeah, always trying to be more creative and keeping myself learning new things and helps me stay motivated. But also taking lazy breaks, I think really helps me.
For sure.
Turn off my brain.
Yeah, it's almost to like recharge your battery almost.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I think this is a very personal question for me because I think I've shared before, I come from first-gen low-income background. So for me, I feel as though I'm so grateful to have the opportunities that I have today in my life. If it weren't for my parents who broke their backs working, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, and I'm sure if you come from an immigrant background, for those people who are watching or come from a similar background, you'd completely resonate with what I'm saying. And for me, I took that, and given just seeing how hard they were working, how much they had to struggle as I was growing up, it made me always think at the back of my mind, like, man, like what I would do to try and help my parents, what I would do to try to help alleviate some of the strains that, just comes with just having a family here. And so I always think, as I think about creating content, as I think about staying motivated, for me, the biggest motivating factor is my parents, which is super cliche.
Yeah.
But it, to me, is a very personal one because I have such a privilege to be at the company that I'm at, to have the opportunity to even interview people like you, Angelica, to even just, have the flexibility of working from home is something that I for sure take for granted, but always try to remind myself and like root myself that, hey, like this is for sure such a privilege, and like all this stuff could be taken away tomorrow. But as it relates to the content, I always think about like freshman year Jerry, like 18-year-old Jerry, like what would he love to read online that would really help have motion or impact or action that'll help me drive just like an inch closer to my career. Because similar to you, like I love hearing people's stories, and if you want to share your story with me, please, my inbox is always open. I always reply, at least to as much as I possibly can, especially for those people who are comfortable sharing their stories. And so, yeah, for me, I think that's a very personal one.
Yeah, I think that what you said about family is, I think, very common for a lot of immigrant families or people who just come from underrepresented communities. But also, I know that sometimes that's not as simple. Some people have come from struggling backgrounds, but they still can't find themselves to be inspired and motivated. So I also want people to know that,
for sure,
it's not that simple. Like to
good call.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's get back into it. So as we're thinking about personal branding, content, all this stuff, I see a lot of questions around how do you, or I guess, does your professional life and your personal branding life come into mix? In other words, does one help the other?
Yeah, I think that I've been learning a lot interning at Google, but I've also learned a lot creating content online, social media under my name, Angelica Song, and also launching Your College Sis as like a sub brand. And I think a lot of it's to interact because I'm targeting my stuff to Gen Z. And, at Google, we're always looking to how to keep up with the trends and how to be relevant and how to stay relevant to Gen Z. And so I think that's helped me become a better marketer, a better intern, because I've been on the other side of, creating content and seeing what works and what doesn't, like constantly A/B testing every day, testing out messaging strategies. That's kind of how I see those two worlds kind of coming together. And I've been able to use my credibility of, going to Berkeley and very lucky being an intern at Google to have people, trust me and use that to continue to spread like good, positive advice and tips.
Yeah. And for those people who don't know, Angelica actually was just featured on Business Insider and it is the craziest thing. I'm gonna post it in the chat or in the comment section below. It is actually insane. I'm like, I actually know a celebrity now. This is my moment of fame.
No, Jerry is the real celebrity here. I used to see his I mean, I still do, but his viral LinkedIn posts.
Yeah, I love it. So, anyways, as you're thinking about moving forward with your content, where do you want to take it? Like, where do you see the, like 1, 2, 3 year down, like time horizon? Like, what do you hope to do?
Well, in terms of like my personal content of Angelica Song, I would love to continue just lifestyle, post grad, self growth. Just I keep it pretty casual on my Angelica Song platforms. But on Your College Sis, I would love to build this out to a community where we have different writers or come in for different blog, like make it more about the community, because as of now I'm posting most of the content, and sure, I bring in like spotlights and highlights of different individuals. I would love to really activate people to be a blogger or write a columnist, or maybe they're a local Your College Sis and they have their own things. And so really building a community is my biggest goal.
Yeah. So as you're thinking about inspiring action into other people to create content, then what is, if I were to, so I don't have a TikTok, but I stay on TikTok and I lurk on there for like hours every day. If you were to tell me to create TikToks starting today, right? How would I go about it? Or even just content in general?
Content in general, I'd always say you have to be a heavy consumer. If you want your content to do well, I think it's really important to know what's out there, what's working, what's not, what's trendy, what's timeless. And not to say just create trendy stuff, but there's a balance of picking searchable, sought-after content and also mixing in elements of yourself. For example, I wouldn't start with vlogs, right? I don't even do too many vlogs because people, come to me for resource and value, and that's more important first to build an audience rather than just starting vlogs, because then why would people watch your vlogs if they don't know you yet, right? So finding a niche content, consuming a lot of the content, and then being consistent. So whether it's TikTok or YouTube, good lighting, good audio, all that stuff is really important. But yeah, definitely consistency and just a lot of practice.
Yeah. And for those people who are interested in creating content, maybe even on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is, you guys are all on LinkedIn, or maybe you guys are on Facebook, right? On SAN, right? But if you guys are there, I encourage you guys to just even start by creating a LinkedIn post today, right? And maybe just tag me in Angelica and just type maybe some of the key learnings that you've had. Because what we hope is that if you create that content, we engage with it, what happens then is that your content will get shown to a subset of our followers, and then hopefully it'll boom, right? And so for those people who are interested in creating content, I would love for you to type #me if you're going to create content and tag us, and I would love to see it. I love it. Angelica, I think one of the final questions that I have for you is, as you're thinking about moving forward with your career, and I think I saw a question around this, moving forward with your career as well as building your online brand, how are you going to balance between the two?
Well, to be honest, I don't think I'm at that bridge yet, so I try not to think about it too much. But I would love, in my perfect world, I keep both, and they're two projects of mine, and they both help each other. And yeah, I'm hoping this helps this helps this. Very similar to how there was the girl boss movement a few years ago, started by Sophia, CEO of Nasty Gal. So she was a CEO and founder, but also built this whole community of girl boss. And so they both helped each other grow and develop and learn. And so hopefully I can keep both in my life and keep it mutually beneficial to one another. Yeah, and hopefully I don't have to choose between one or the other.
Awesome. Yeah, I found that, thankfully, I have a team at Google, and if anyone is watching from who I work with, hi. I think one of the best thing that I really enjoy about our team, about my team, is that we're all extremely so supportive of each other's passions, and they all know that this is mine, and like they always crack jokes, but they also respect that, like, hey,
My team crack jokes too about this.
yeah, right? But it's nice because then you have a group between, like, you almost have like you have space for them to coexist, right? And for me, one thing I really enjoyed is that about just building Wonsulting as well as building my career. One thing that I've noticed is that they definitely help with each other, right? Like all the stuff that I'm kind of learning at Google, all the softer skills, organization, project management, all that stuff, I'm starting to pour over to Wonsulting. And a lot of the stuff I'm learning about being scrappy, about just trying to figure things out, like I'm beginning to learn that and pour it over to my time at Google. And so for those people who are interested about thinking about building your content, please hashtag me, create content. 3 learnings about one of the, 3 learnings they've had about what Angelica has mentioned or maybe what I have mentioned. I'm more than happy to engage with you.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see everybody's posts.
Yeah. Awesome. So let us know if you have any questions with hashtag question. List out your question. We're going to get to some questions now. But before we do, any, I guess, lasting thoughts or ending thoughts, Angelica, before we kind of transition into Q&A?
I would say that when you make content, I think in the beginning, it's really important that you find a balance between what you want to post, but also you think posts that you think will resonate with others. So it's finding that happy medium of middle. And if growth is really your number one priority, just because there's so much out there on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, being smart and intentional about it, I think is the smartest way to do it.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for that. So let's see here. I know that we slightly talked about this, but we have a question from Alvin. Alvin is actually one of our community lead at Wonsulting. So thanks for tuning in, Alvin. Alvin asks, how do you balance work with content creation? How do you avoid burnout? So as you're thinking about working now, Angelica, how do you think about balancing the mix between the two?
I'm not the best person to talk about balance. I'm very workaholic, and that's not a brag or anything. It's there's pros and cons. Type A, will be working 16, 18 hours a day to do both. Because right now I'm on this like go high, and I definitely need to get better at managing. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. But yeah, definitely prioritizing things, setting certain days for certain things, it helps a lot. But also, my first and foremost priority is my internship at Google, and I'm a student first, and I still need to graduate. I still have to do all that stuff. So I want to be very smart about the way I prioritize my time, although they're both very important to me. What's right in front of me is, my internship, graduating, getting a full-time job, and that is definitely more on the forefront of my mind, and everything else is supplemental, and depends on how much caffeine I had that day to figure out if I want to insert the other one.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that you brought up priorities, right? Because at the end of the day, like, it is so true. Prioritization is so key. For me, like, I think I spend a lot of my nights doing Wonsulting, because you're right. Like, for me, priority number one is my work. It's going to develop me professionally, keeps the lights on. But nights are when I have more free time, where I can have fun doing stuff like this, right? And I really appreciate just having fun and having the opportunity to connect with people.
Yeah.
Awesome. Elizabeth Hicks says, I'm a type 7. Would you agree, Angelica?
I would say you're a type 7 or 8, okay. But also being the type 3 I am, I kind of only know things about type 3.
Okay, gotcha. Cool, okay. Let's see here. I guess this is more internship related. Abigail asks, how would you best prepare for applying to a big tech internship? So what specifically did you do?
Well, I don't know exactly what I did that resulted a positive result.
Yeah.
But, finding opportunities on campus, I think, is a really cool thing. Work study, 100% valuable and worthy and just as important as any other internship or job. So whether you can apply to work study that kind of has related to your field. So I did a lot of social media marketing positions on campus. So I can have those like KPIs and numbers and metrics. So even if they weren't marketing or consulting roles, I could put, action and result-based points on my resume. So finding opportunities where you can and really taking that and bringing it to life, I think is really key if you don't have a whole bunch of other, prestigious name brand internships beforehand. And then also just doing your research about the company and the program, talking to people who've done it, would help you put the correct hat on when you're applying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think I don't know how I was chosen. I think I was just chosen. They're just like, all right, random pick, perfect, Jerry, right?
Same.
Yeah, but yeah, I would say that in all seriousness, it probably just comes down to the typical things of making sure you have a well-structured resume, right? Just make sure that it's one page, action-driven. You have a lot of numbers on there. You have internship experience. If not, talk about your work experience on campus, or maybe even just talking about some of your school academic projects. Those all for sure count as well.
And if you can get a referral, that'd be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, so hit up Angela for referrals.
Hit up Jerry for a referral.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. We have a question from a LinkedIn user. While building your personal brand, how often do you recommend to post content?
I would say depends on the platform. TikTok, people say it's useful to post 2 to 3 times a day.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. If in the beginning, if you want to grow, that's kind of the secret formula that's worked for a lot of people, 2 to 3 times a day. YouTube, if you can start with once a week, twice a week, but consistent. Instagram, 2 to 3 times a week. LinkedIn, how often do you post on LinkedIn?
I try not to do more than once every 2 or 3 days. I think how the LinkedIn content cycle typically goes is during the first what I've realized is during the first day is very indicative of how well your content is gonna do. On average, if you have if you see a really big momentum where you see a lot of likes coming in at the end of day 1, it'll probably trickle down and die down by day 2 or 3. And so, given that time frame, you don't want to keep posting content because your content might get suffocated by your other content. So you just want to give it some time. So with that, though, I think comes with just making sure that when you're posting content, that it's very action driven or that it's very story driven. I think a lot of people just write very useful content, and they'll say things like, "Hey, let's inspire each other and let's work hard and motivate each other," but don't really talk about how they can inspire people, how we can motivate each other. So focusing more on the how, I think, is really important. Cool. This is a really good question. How do you think a big social media following affected your professional career, or has it?
Well, it definitely helps that my content is pretty work safe. I post about my life in college and, helping high school students. So it's something to be mindful as well, is how work safe you want to make your content. That's a personal decision. But so far, it's actually only been a plus because of my social media experience and my content creating experience. I've been fortunate enough to talk to really cool people at YouTube and directors at YouTube, and also just, have a lot of things to contribute when it comes to the social media stuff and the marketing for digital and Gen Z campaigns, what goes viral. So it's only been a benefit to me, and my team loves it, and they are really proud, and they love cheering me on. So it all depends on your content. I don't know what you're going to be posting, but if it's wholesome and helping other people, I don't think it should be a problem, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think if anything, it shows that you have a passion that's very real, outside of work, right? And I think you can say that, hey, this is the passion that I have. And I think that's just the slight added benefit, but that's not to say that other passions don't allow for that. So, but for me, even as I've had conversations with recruiters, I always do bring up Wonsulting. And what's funny is that if if the conversation ends up with us saying, you know what, maybe it's not a fit for now, I'll then shift the content to saying, hey, you want to be part of a Wonsulting panel? So it becomes a feeder for us. Which is funny enough. Cool. And I guess one of the comments that we have here is, I think this is a great question, and I'm happy to take it. Hello, how can we network effectively where we can seek referrals? I think this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions about networking is that you network for referrals instead of networking to develop genuine relationships, to find out more about the companies, to find out whether or not those jobs are actually going to be more useful or like is really aligned with your interests, then asking for a referral. I think if you're purely just going for the purposes of just reaching out to someone and saying, hey, I'd love a referral, thank you, you probably shouldn't do that. I think the right way to go about it is really doing your due diligence and sharing. I think it's at the end of the day all about quality over quantity. Like if someone comes to me and says, hey, like I see the work that you're doing at Wonsulting, I see the work that you're doing at Google, I'd love to understand how Google cultivates a culture for you to work on passion projects that is completely unrelated to your work, right? Then like I'm more inclined to say, oh yeah, I'm more than happy to share a little bit more about my experience with you. But and then as a result, if that person gives me the impression that, wow, like this person is really passionate about working at Google and really passionate about these specific functions, like I would feel much more comfortable sending a referral than someone who just comes to me and says, hey, Jerry, I want a referral. Can you refer me?
Yeah, and also, and I completely agree with Jerry, and I've been, telling my friends and audiences as well. It's like the best type of referral usually comes when they offer it first, just because you guys get along so well, and you shouldn't have to ask for it. And that means that usually means you don't network with people just before recruiting season. It's just to meet people and to talk to people, and that means not every person you coffee chat you're going to love, and they're not going to love you either. And it's just because people just have different personalities. So you need to figure out who you like, who you vibe with, and develop those relationships. Check in, ask for help, ask for growth, and then an opportunity will rise. And if you like you're at a place where you guys are close enough to talk about an internship or a job, I think that referral process comes only super naturally. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Love that. So we have a question from Katrina. Really good question. I think, Angelica, you talked a lot about finding those niche audiences, right? Like make sure you find your niche, create content, consistency, right? As you're thinking about for people who are just starting, let's say I were to start on TikTok tomorrow, and let's say I didn't want to create career-related content. Like how would I find my niche? Is it more of a trial and error? Is it more of a strategic thing where I can, find what's hot and trending, and then I move forward with that? How would you suggest I think about that?
I think you just do a mix of everything in the beginning. Test all the niches you're interested in. Sure, you're interested in recruiting, but maybe you have other hobbies of, I don't know, basketball or tech or
cooking. I love cooking.
Yeah, test it all out and see what works. And ideally, you're testing out all the things you like anyway, so it doesn't really matter what works and what doesn't. So test it all out and have the market decide what your niche is, because you can do a lot of things, and people are intricate and complex enough to have more than one niche. It's just having the market decide what they want your niche to be.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, that's so insightful. Have your market determine your niche. If you thought that was insightful, type the little click the little green clapping emoji on the chat here. Like, I love that, right? Because at the end of the day, you're right. Like, if you're first you want to find your interest, then figure out what the market thinks of your interests and the way that you post content, and then move forward from there. Cool. Let's see here. Martin has a great question. Do you sometimes separate your personality on social media with real life?
No, because I didn't really expect social media to grow. I mean, like I said, I started in January 2020, and then COVID happened. So I didn't expect or plan for any of this growth. So, I mean, people will tell you who know me in real life, or I've spoken with some followers via FaceTime or Zoom, that I'm pretty much identical. I am on video and in person, and I take a lot of pride, and I proud that I am that way. But I also know not everybody is like that, and I definitely know that there are creators who are much different in real life than they are in person, and that's what they want to do. So, yeah, there's no wrong or right way, but that's just how I do it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think it's really hard. I think if you were to almost have like two lives, where you have like one personality and the other. Like for me, I think my personal philosophy is like, hey, if you vibe with me, if you think I'm cool, whatever that is, like let's continue chatting. Otherwise, we don't have to be friends if you don't like me. Cool. And I know that we're getting close to time, so maybe we'll end it with one last question. Let's see here.
What's the best one?
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure. Interesting. This is a really interesting question. How do you turn off the pressures from society and parents to get a stable job right out of school? Any advice to a recent grad that needs to do more soul searching? Thanks.
To be honest, I don't think I'm there where I think I'm interning at Google. I plan to come back. I think that still a large part of me wants that stability, even when my content stuff grows. So I'm probably not the best person to ask that question, because I wish I was as brave and entrepreneurial as this question is of turning that off. But my background, my circumstances, and just my personality is very risk adverse. Yeah, I'm very risk averse, hence why I'm doing both full time. But all props to you, and
Yeah, I really like that, and I think what's kind of nested under there is like, if your personal, or if your like passion isn't in a field where you can generate enough income to support yourself, what do you do? Like you're like similar to Angelica, I'm just not in that position, so I can't share that insight. But if I were to think about this question, I think it ultimately comes down to like, what are your options, right? Like you can go get a stable job, do your passions outside of work, or you can do both at the same time, right? And inevitably, hopefully, if your passion turns into something where you see a lot more potential, then you can maybe make that transition. But I think right out of the gate, you don't have to choose one or the other. Maybe you could choose a mix between the two. Awesome. Angelica, I know that we've been online for a little bit. Any last thoughts before we close it off?
I really want to encourage people to, if they've ever wanted to start social media or building a brand or anything digitally, right now is the best time to do it. Everyone's home. Everyone's online. You're probably home if you're fortunate enough. But there's going to be, in the back of your mind, I'm sure, even when you started Wonsulting and creating LinkedIn posts, you're always like, well, I'm afraid what my, not your friends, but it's always like those acquaintances. Like, what are they going to think? But, you can't let those people prevent you from doing what you want. And a lot of times people who have an opinion about what you do, they're just secretly jealous that you don't have the confidence and the courage to do so. So I urge you that to always try if you're interested, and your close friends will always be supportive, and anybody else is just irrelevant.
Yeah, and I love that, right? Because you're right, that I think when I first started posting content, I was so worried of like what people might think. They might think I'm weird.
Who does he think he is? Right.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, like you choose the people that you want to surround yourself with, and if you need any words of encouragement, tag me and Angelica. Create your first LinkedIn post of 2 takeaways that you've had throughout this chat, and we'll engage with you, right? And we'll be your support system. So with that, thank you guys so much for your time. If you guys want to create LinkedIn posts, create one, tag me and Angelica. We will get back to you. We'll hopefully push that out for you to almost get that like Kindle, and we'll be your biggest support systems. Thank you guys so much for your times, but most importantly, thank you so much, Angelica, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for having me. Thank you everyone who watched and commented.
Cool, awesome. With that, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.